I could make a lot of progress here if I stopped spending money out on random food and instead I put that money towards a meal service. And not only did my bank account get healthier, but so did my body. Welcome to the Moms Makin Dough podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt, and today's topic, we're going to dive into why you should consider ditching traditional budgeting methods. And I'm going to show you a whole new way to align and create what I call an alignment plan with your money. This is one of the huge steps I like to walk people through when you're really looking to rebuild and reheal that relationship with your money. So let's dive in. First off, um, I want to clarify the difference between having a budget and, I should say, not having a budget. The components of having a budget, and then the difference between what creating an alignment plan is. An alignment plan starts off with a couple of prerequisites. We're going to start to align your vision and the values you have on your money before you're starting to tell your money how to work for you. So, today's first step is you're going to really future pace. You're going to future pace what your vision is for your finances. What are the things you want to spend your money? What is your vision? What is really important to you? And always like to start off with this caveat is that your current reality might and should not match the vision for the future. You want to paint the picture of something that you really want to start chasing after and embracing as you start to evolve as a human and evolve and heal your relationship with money. So, envisioning some of the things that I hear typically when I start to walk people through this exercise is like they want to travel, or maybe they want to buy a house, maybe they want to start a college fund, maybe they want to finally start investing their money. Maybe you want to pay yourself more. Maybe you want to save more for retirement. Maybe you want to be debt free. Those are just a couple of the, like, more common ones that I feel like come up, whether you are an entrepreneur or whether you work in a company. I just want you to start really thinking about, like, what are those things that stand out to you that would really get you excited? This is where, like I said, we're future pacing. What is that vision for how, if money was not a factor, a limiting factor for you, how would you be spending it? And remember also too is that, like, you only have a couple of resources. You have your time, your energy, and your money. And we're really focusing on, like, how we're spending our money today with this exercise of creating your alignment plan. So, the first step is really starting to envision what is that future for you with how you want to invest your one of your most precious resources, your money. The second thing that we're going to do in this step is you're going to start to establish your core values when it comes to your finances. So when I start to think about this, a lot of people get like a little bit like, what do you mean establish your values? If I like to be really clear with this part of the exercise I really like to give you is just for you to really start to jog that brain of yours and also connect with that heart of yours on, like, what is really important to you. I'm going to give you some examples of mine. So some of my top, I would say probably 10 core values. I really like to people to refine it to 5-ish, where it's either a yay or nay when you're making a monetary decision. But for sake of ease today, I'm going to give you just some examples of 10 of my top ones. They're not in any particular order. It's just when I did this part of the exercise in preparation to share it with you today, this was kind of how it came out of me. And what I want you to really think about too is that a lot of these are unconscious. a lot of these things that you are desiring, things that you value. And the difference between the vision and the vision is going to be, like I said, future pacing what you want to see manifest in your money. But when it comes to the values do not tend to change. They are something that at your core is something very important to you, so you see it much more consistently. Your vision, however, can change over time, even by the end of the month in some cases, when it comes to how you're going to invest your money and your resources that you do have available to you. So, a couple of the top ones that I have on my list are, I'm just going to read them to you: generosity, health, financial independence, integrity, love, abundance, peace of mind, discipline, purpose, and connection. So those are when and this will be a really important, like I said, prerequisite for the next part of the exercise that I'm really going to encourage you to do. So if you are driving, walking your dog, dropping the kids off at school, I want you to just start, like, when you think about what are the core values that are important to you right now, just start downloading what those are. And like I said, don't try to put them in order, don't try to compare and contrast. I just want you to start to download. The goal is, sometimes what I'll do is, like, people, I'll have them just even chat GPT or Google a list of different values. I think there's like a list of 300 plus values in alphabetical order I've seen online, and I'll have them just pull that up, and sometimes instead of writing them down, just organically go through that list. It doesn't take long, max couple 3 to 5 minutes, and just really highlighting the ones that stand out to you, like, "Yes, that is really freaking important to me." The next step we're gonna do in creating your alignment plan is one that's more traditional, but I like to really, reframe a little bit of that tradition. And that is this, is that your current facts and the current place in your reality. Now, this is the place where a lot of people get a little bit stuck because they really do not want to face it, or they don't want to confront what their current money reality situation is. But you cannot move forward until you've confronted the actual facts on where you're at. I'm actually going through this with my husband right now. We are working on really communicating on our finances differently, and not so much our business finances, but more so our personal finances, because we have never really done that on a consistent basis. So I'm starting to create that and craft that formula, which once I have it tested, I will be sharing with all of you. But this is where we have to get really real on. I just even thought about, like, how I went through this process with my husband just last week, where it was like, what were the questions I asked? So these are more your traditional budgeting type questions. Because you cannot create a new reality if you are living in fantasy of the current one you are when it comes to your finances. So, creating cash flow is going to be your number one question. What do you currently have coming in? And when I say this, this is not more so a braid up. This is not like I think I have $2,000 coming in. This is last month, what hit my bank account was this amount. This is the real hard facts, right? And if you are a W-2 employee, I suggest that this number is taken after taxes. If you do not pay yourself as a W-2, or you pay yourself as a combination, W-2 and dividends. A lot of my listeners and my clients are all entrepreneurial, so they don't necessarily have a traditional W-2 income. What I want you to write here is, if you have either a W-2, it's what you're bringing in after taxes. If it's you pay yourself through your business via dividends, or what's called typically a draw, I want you to put that in as the what that you actually took out last month of the business. Now, I want to be really, really clear on what it means when I say what you took out of your business. I want to see in this column what you wrote, what you actually had hit your account, not what you paid for health insurance, what you ran your cell phone through the business, all of these business perks of ownership, but they are actually captured on your P&L and not actually into your personal bank account. So we're looking at what comes into your personal bank account at this point. Like I said, if it's draw or dividends, most likely it's going to be not before taxes, right? So if you are a W-2 employee, it might be a very odd number. The more specific, I want that real number, not if you have a W-2 coming in and you collected, like I said, you got paid $2,500, but after taxes, what actually went into your account was, 1888.72. Put that down here. Is that's what I brought in, times 2 or whatever it is. Add the actual total. And then if you had dividends, let's say it's $2,000, let's put that $2,000 in this column. Let's get really raw on what is that cash flow that came in. One of my biggest focuses in my coaching side of my business is really shifting women how to pay themselves first. This is a really, really hard concept for a lot of us to start to learn and be taught how to do. So I find that sometimes this number is really challenging. If you want to bonus or extra credit, one of the things I like to do here is I also sometimes ask people, like, what did you bring in last year on your tax return? You don't have to get that granular for the actual creation of the alignment plan, but it is a really good number to use for what we're going to do moving forward. So, what do you currently have coming in terms of cash flow in whatever format it comes in? You might have a rental property like I do, so you have rent that comes in. That is also I accounted for in this category when we're talking about your personal finances. And here's something that I think is very important that I say here is, as I mentioned, most of my coaching clients have businesses. With that said, if you have a conundrum in your business finances, you are never going to fix that conundrum. This is what I've seen from experience until you fix your own money stuff in your personal life. So you can't have one or the other, a business that's booming financially and be a mess in your personal life. So I really am saying start with your alignment plan here for your personal life. I There's some different additional strategies that I talk about for the alignment plan. If you're a business owner, that will be a totally separate episode. But I am going to give both examples in this specific episode because I do want people to be able to see the difference and start to work on both consecutively, but really focusing on the personal across the board is going to make a huge difference in how you treat your business finances. So, second question, traditional question, you got to figure out what's going out of that account, right? What are your actual expenses? And then what you're going to do is you're going to start to really look for patterns and patterns of like, hey, how am I spending my money? I always used to say this that, like, if you want to show me what you value, all I have to do is really see a picture of your bank statement, a screenshot of your bank statement. And when I talk about this, I always explain the example, like my husband and I is like we did this exercise before. We're doing it recently next week again too, where we're really looking at like how are we spending our money. And when I think about this, it's like when we first did this exercise, it was legit on all food. But then we were spending in other places that we really weren't aware of until we showed each other, which I'm going to get into some of the accountability of it. And one was like we were still buying a lot of coffee out, even though neither one of us are like huge coffee drinkers. But like at the same time, it was something that was like a little bit of a breakup of our day when we worked really long days. And I just remember that one so clearly. If you any of you know David Bach, his book, which is fabulous, it's called The Latte Factor. And I remember when we printed out our statements and I just was like, wow, bought, 13 or 14 coffees out this month. And I was like, at that point it was what, maybe $5. Now it's almost double, I feel like, to get a nice coffee out. But it was kind of eye-opening of that little thing, what he calls a latte factor, that little purchase you're making every day on a consistent basis, even though it's tiny, they add up over time. So, this is where when your expenses, you're gonna start to look for things that, categories and patterns, in how you're spending your money. And this is where the traditional budget questions meet the alignment plan. And how that looks is this. Once you start looking at the categories, you're going to start comparing them to the list of values you created in step one. And let me give you some examples so this starts to come alive for you. I'm going to give you one that resonates with me, and I'm going to give you one that I hear often, even though I can't really relate to it, but I'm sure someone listening might be able to. One is that, um, one of my core values is health. So, when I looked at my statement and I'm like, "Man, I'm eating out a lot more than I actually would like to be," and that's not really in alignment with my health goals, because I know if I go to a restaurant, there's a lot of factors I can't control, portion size being one of them, the amount of unhealthy fats they're using to cook the food, the amount of salt they're adding, the amount of protein they give me when I know I need a specific amount of protein at every meal. So I started to look at this and I'm like, listen, if I am if I'm continuing to spend this money on going out to eat, what would be a shift that I could make? And so this is where Ryan and I started using a meal service, and we would get meals delivered, and we got these meals delivered instead of for one time to eat out, we could get meals sometimes for a week. And we would get those meals delivered, and then we would not only save money, but we would also save time. So when I looked at some of the categories and how I was spending money, coffee and eating out were two things that were a lot more frequent on that statement than I'd care to admit. So, kind of a shortcut on this part of the exercise is going to be you really looking at your statement, and or most of us, what I really like to do is I will pull up my online bank account and I will just go in order what ran for payments that month and I'll start to categorize them. Okay, this is a basic necessity. If I think it's episode 4, I'll link it in the show notes where I talk about the exercise I do where it's negotiables, necessities, and nice to have, the 3 categories that I walk through when I look at my actual statement exercise, that what I call the statement audit. And, so that was, like, one of the ways that I was like, "Hey, I could make a lot of progress here if I stopped spending money out on random food, and instead, I put that money towards a meal service." And not only did my bank account get healthier, but so did my body. So that was a great way for me to see, like, "Hey, my current spending in this category is out of alignment with what I say my core values, specifically when it comes to my money, are, and there's not a match there." So I'm looking for patterns that do not match when I'm at this part of the exercise. Another one, I have one woman client and she loves handbags. Like we're talking like $3,000 handbags, not, $30 handbags from Forever 21 like I tend to buy. Um, I This is the example that I was gonna share because I can't really relate to it because I like the art of the deal. I like the TJ Maxxes and the Home Goods. I also do like really nice stuff at once. This is one thing that, mindset shift my husband has really helped me with, is that, like, he's like, "Dude, it's so much better to have 1 pair of nice shoes than 12 shitty shoes that you're gonna throw out, even though you spent just a little bit of money of them. But if you add them all up, you have 12 pairs of shoes that you spent $30 on versus if you buy 1 or 2 nice pairs of shoes at $200, $300. Doesn't that make you feel better?" And at first, that was uncomfortable for me. I was like, "No, that's not that." The art of finding a $12 pair of shoes at TJ Maxx, even though I'm gonna wear them for 1 summer, is a little bit more exciting to me. And that was just me, but now I've made that shift because I started to see the value in having one nice thing and not collecting random stuff just because it was on sale. But back to the one with the handbags. So she loved, like, $3,000 handbags. $3,000 plus sometimes. But her goal was to start investing. And so when we did the alignment plan creation for her, one of the things that we went over, I was like, listen, you have in the last 6 months, she had bought, I think it was four, maybe even five, I think. Let's put it this way. It was about $20,000 in handbags. And, so one of the things we worked on was A, what is the behavior we need to shift? So she really needed to shift the behavior of purchasing the handbag, and she needed to start to become the boss of her money in her alignment plan, which meant she needed to set up an account for investing. So we started really small, where her budget was typically, like I said, $3,000 for a bag. I was like, okay, well, what would you be more comfortable with? How about would you want to buy less bags? One nice bag occasionally. And we started working through some of the options to find the one that aligned for her. What she ended up settling on is that she wanted to continue her love of nice handbags. However, what she decided she was gonna resell some of the ones that no longer she did not use frequently, and they weren't like, what did she call them? I think Hallmark pieces, that she coveted. So she created some cash flow by getting rid of some stuff she had and creating some space for her to have what she would do is she rolled the money from this bag she sold into the account for her handbag fund, which she legit had a handbag fund in her accounts, which we're gonna talk about soon. And then what she did from there was we set up an investment account, and she started putting money in that investment account. Now, the investment account, when she had enough bankrolled in there, that's when she went back to her core values and she was like, "Hey, what's really important to me?" Well, what was really important to her was starting to an investment account so she could get in alignment with one of her core values, which was financial independence. Do you see the disconnect on if she's spending money randomly on a $3 to $5,000 handbag bag? And so what she went to is she went to instead of buying them, like, very randomly, which was typically, once every 60 days for her and before we started doing this, she went to buying 1 bag a quarter. And she had a limit on those bags, and she had an account specifically for, like, "Hey, this is my fun." She called it her fun handbag account. Now, like I said, this is not an an example I can relate to very easily, but the reason I wanna share it is because I find it's very concrete for people to understand. So, that's just a really good example to kind of bring it back to, like, bulking them into categories, like how you are currently spending your money instead of just listing out your expenses. You're looking for the patterns that you want to A, continue, and B, maybe discontinue. What I like to refer to as the stop doing and the start doing list. Kind of more harnessing the power of, addition and subtraction, because what I find is that typically when people hear the word budget, what starts to happen is that they go right into that scarcity. Oh, I'm going to have to cut a bunch of stuff. Now, while that is possible and true, reframing that for yourself is like actually shifting it to how you spend your money and where you or how you invest it, how you save it, whatever it is that's in alignment with your values is going to be the key skill here that we're looking to do with this part of the exercise. So we're looking to collect the data of your current reality on what is coming into your account in terms of the hard, true facts on financially what came into your as income and then what is going out. Like I said, the best thing to do is really look 30 days in arrears. So look at the previous 30 days, but an even truer picture is going to be the previous 90 days. If you've also listened to my episode on reverse engineering your money goals, that might be a really good one to listen to as well on this process once you've started to do this pattern identification. Once we start to see the patterns and we know those two facts, right? What am I bringing in? What is going out? We're going to start to create what I call the shift. And that's shifting from the budgeting word, scarcity driven, to much more of alignment plan that's based in creating and crafting abundance. So, the story I always used to like here is, like I said, I come from a health and wellness background. That is what my husband's business has been for the last 15 years plus, actually 15 years plus. And I'm just super passionate about health and fitness. And so while that's not my main business, I love this metaphor because I find that it's very easy to grasp the concept of. And this is what I always like to preface on understanding the alignment plan is that I want you to think about the alignment plan as more of a small plates method. So if you are trying to lose weight, this is, and like I said, I'm going to say this method for the purpose of the metaphor. It's not fitness advice I'm giving here because actually there's some of it that doesn't really align with what I would want to teach on this. I want you to think about the small plates. So one of the ways that small plates works is that typically, if any of you have ever heard of this concept called Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law is the best way I can explain Parkinson's law before we get into the plates is this. Think about how many of you ever have that, like, tube of toothpaste and it's getting towards the bottom, right? But it's, like, it was so easy to just open a new thing of toothpaste, but there is some still left in there, and if you're like me, I, like, roll it up and I'm gonna juice it for all it's worth. So Parkinson's law, the actual technical definition is the demand for something expands to match its supply, right? The demand for something expands to match its supply. So, case in point, the toothpaste, I'm going to start demanding that I get every last bit of the toothpaste before I use it, before I get a new one, right? So, same thing with the small plates theory. How the small plates theory works is that, like, if you're trying to lose weight, the idea behind it is that if you have a typical portion, regular plate size, especially if you came from a family that taught like clean plate club or rewarded you for clean plate club in some fashion, usually with dessert, right? You've been conditioned to think of like, hey, here's the plate I have. This is all of the food I have to consume. When you have a smaller plate, you are a smaller portion to eat. Therefore, you get less intake, which the idea behind the theory is that less intake means less calories, right? Which does still have some sort of weight behind it, but not the whole picture, right? The second part of the small plates is that, like, usually when you have the smaller plate, not only do you have a smaller portion to eat, but it puts your focus onto one specific area of the plate, right? So I like to always teach is like I teach people focus on protein first. Like when you're looking at your plate, ask yourself, where's your protein? And eat that first, right? Because protein is very filling. It's the most bang for your buck. And definitely what I find is the most value, especially as you get older, right? So when we look at the small plate theory, we're really putting Parkinson's law into action. So we're getting a smaller portion to eat, which means less intake. We're also getting a magnified focus. So we have a protein first focus in this scenario. And then the third step of the smaller plate theory is also you're removing temptation, right? So if you have a full, sweet potato with maple sugar and marshmallow and all that kind of stuff, and you only give yourself half of that sweet potato because you've removed temptation, the chances are you're going to enjoy the one that you have left, but you're not going to go after it. It's like what I always teach people, like, if you don't buy it, you can't eat it, right? Like, don't have it in your house. And also too, like removing temptation. So this is exactly the same exact theory that we're going to apply to your finances to be able to create and craft your alignment plan. So what does that look like? Um, what you're also going to see here is that when we're crafting your alignment plan, this is also very similar to what many people are familiar with, which is called the envelope theory. I'm going to kind of date myself. I know that I'm not exactly sure who came up with this concept, but it's a very popular concept in a lot of like Dave Ramsey's work and some of the bigger financial gurus. that teach a little bit of different methodology behind it, but the concept's the same. Is that like if you don't have it to spend, you can't spend it. And that's how the envelope theory works, similar to finances with the small plates, right? So you would get, let's say you made $1,000 that week, you'd have $1,000 and you would basically take the $1,000 and you divide it up into portions of envelopes. So if you went to the grocery store and you opened your envelope and you had $300 to spend, that's what you had to spend. So if you spent 260 and not the 300, you have $40 left, then that either rolls over to the next week and or you have another stop you could do. Maybe you can get takeout on the way. I don't You can't even get takeout for $40 anymore, I don't think. So, this is where you're starting to shift to the actual real action plan behind step 3, which is going to be identifying your accounts. Okay, so your income account is going to be whether you are doing this for your business or your personal finances. The first account is always going to be the same. You're going to have one bank account, and that's going to be where all of your income comes in. If you are in a significant if you have a significant other, my suggestion is that this is the one account that you also both put into, and or if you have separate accounts, you can have one income account and then you can have a joint account if you like to do it that way. That's actually how my husband and I do it. We do our income into our own income account, and then we have a joint account that we manage together. So, income, business wise, it might be called your merchant account and or just your income account. It's where however you get paid comes into it. And here's the thing, this is your core fundamental account when you're creating your alignment plan. So you've got your vision, you've got your values, you've collected your data and identified the patterns of how you are currently bringing in and spending money. And now you're going to start to be the boss of it. You're going to start to put it to work. I'm going to share the accounts that I have. I have once that money comes into that income count, I have 5 accounts that I have set up that are linked to this income account. So all of these accounts are linked to that income account. The number 1 account I have is tithing. Well, how does tithing work? Now, you might not be someone that has this as an option and or desire right now, but it really ties back to my core value is that I want to be generous with my funds. I want to give my first fruits. So I put tithing as one of my accounts. I actually have a bank account separate, open, and it says tithing. Um, Second account I have, or the third one, technically, if I count the income one as one, is basics. These are going to be my necessities. This is where my mortgage, my utilities, the things that I absolutely need that are my basic core fundamentals, my utility bills, maybe it's my cell phone, things that like I need gas in my car payments, car insurance, things that I can't forget and need to be allocated. The next account I have is tribute to my grandma. I call it our rainy day fund. In my business, I call it something else. I'm going to go over that. But rainy day fund, this is my emergency fund. This is like, oh shit, like the water heater broke and we need to replace it. Comes out of my rainy day fund. Then, family fun. And family fun is gonna be vacations, it's gonna be gymnastics lessons, it's gonna be things that are nice to have. This is my nice where my statement audit matches my nice to have category. But there are also things that if I need to cut or get better at planning in terms of financially, this is my first one that I can kind of make some moves on. And then the last one is going to be my investment fund. And this is where I'm putting money aside for me to invest in whatever capacity I like to do that. So, like I said, I'm just sharing what my accounts are. These certainly don't have to be yours. You can come up with any of the names you want as long as they match your values. And so, how do I start to fund these funds? You're going to start looking at the percentage, or what I also refer to as the portion, not the sum. And what I mean by that, I'm going to give you a concrete example is if I take in $10,000 a month, right? So that $10,000 came into my income. And I am going to tithe. I'm going to set a percentage of what I'm going to tithe. In my case, it's 10%. Right? So it's $1,000 that goes into that account, right? And this is not like I said, it's also gonna depend on how you get paid, but the portion is the same based on like a 30-day period, right? So I know if 10,000 came in on a 30-day period, tithing my first account is gonna get $1,000 of that. And then the next, one is my basics account, and I have that current percentage set at 40%. So 40% of that paycheck, $4,000, is gonna go into my basics account. Then the rainy day fund. Right now, I have this set at 20% because I'm being a little bit aggressive on the rainy day fund to make up for some things that I actually had to pay out of it. So 20% of that $10,000, $2,000 is gonna go into that account. Then my family fund, I have that set at 10% right now, and my investment is, set at the remainder. The reason I'm sharing this example is that all of that $10,000 is allocated and accounted for, and I'm being the boss of it by telling it where to go and what its purpose is. So that is so, so huge to this is that you really have to refine and know what that purpose is gonna be. And then the final one is, steps on this is that if you have a business, you're going to look at it a little bit different. I'm going to do a whole separate episode on this. This is just focusing on the real purpose, the alignment plan for your actual personal finances today. And then in closing, what I want you to really start to think of is like, now that I have these accounts identified, they are now I've looked at my current reality. I've looked at what's coming in, what's currently going out. I've identified these accounts that are in alignment with my values. I want to start to look at what I call the 3 A's. And I kind of look at this more as like spinning plates, right? And the 3 A's are going to be assessment, which is what you just did going through this process. So you have one plate that's fully functioning, right? Then you have the second plate you're going to look at is really the action plate, is like, what's the next action you need to take now that you've gone through this assessment? And the third final step is the accountability, right? So figuring out who could you tell or share this with. Hopefully, it's someone in your household, but if it's not, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a friend of just like, hey, I'm committed to this. And how this works is, let's say that friend even invites you out for some drinks, but that is not an alignment right now with how you want to be spending your money or how you need to be spending your money. You're going to be able to have much more discernment on what you say yes to and what you say no to with your money. So, from today, I hope that this was super helpful. I want you to start to identify those accounts and really take action in just setting up one of them. You don't have to do all of them all at once. That can be a lot. Sometimes taking just one step in the right direction can be a huge shift. And I want you to start to make your moves. And once you have that account, let's say it's just setting up that income account where just the income goes in, and then you start to become, um, which the 3 A's really lead to is the assessment, the action, the accountability lead to awareness. And awareness is the thing that will give you the power to create a shift in not only your relationship with money, but how you're managing it and how you can actually become the boss of it. If you liked this episode and know someone who could also benefit from listening to this information, please, 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 please share it with them and rate and review Moms Making Dough. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time.